Sometimes we're at home and the phone rings and you look on the caller ID and you just don't answer the phone. Not because you don't want to talk to that person at all, but maybe you're busy at the time and you just don't want to take the time right then, so you let it go to voicemail, right? Other times the phone rings and you look at the caller ID and you definitely don't want to talk to that person. And so what do? You don't answer it, right? You let it go to voicemail. Well, what if sometime you're at home and you're working, you're busy cleaning house or something, or working on the car or something, and the phone rings and you're thinking, I'm so busy, I don't want to answer it. And you look on the caller ID and it says, unknown caller. You don't know who it is, so now you think it's probably a telemarketer. But you just decide to answer it anyway. And you pick up the phone, and the person on the phone tells you that they're so excited that they got a hold of you. They've been trying to find you for a year because this long-lost relative, the one you didn't even know you had, left you an inheritance of over $1 million. And today is the last day you can claim it, otherwise it's going to go to the state. Would you be glad you answered the phone? So when the phone rings, you want to answer it, right? Well, God is calling you. God is calling every one of us. And my hope is, as we go through this series, that we'll better understand God's calling for us. This is all about God's call on our lives. We all have one. God calls every one of us. And my hope is that when God calls, you'll answer. Don't send God to voicemail. Answer the call. Listen to what Paul says in Romans 8, verse 28. And we know that for those who love God, all things work together for good. That's the first half of the verse. And many of you, if you've been coming to church for a while, you probably have heard this, and you know this, maybe some of you have even memorized it, because it's a really encouraging thing to know, right? That God can use everything in our lives, no matter how good, no matter how bad, that He can use those for good. That means that even when you mess up royally, or something goes tragically wrong, or you lose a loved one, or you lose your job, or something goes really bad, God can still use that for good. That's a really encouraging thing to know. Because many of us have done things that we aren't proud of. Many of us have had tragedies in our lives, and God is still working to make those things work for good in your life. Did you know that when God created you, God stepped back and He looked at you and He said, that's a masterpiece. You are a masterpiece in God's eyes. And when you think of masterpiece, what do you think of? You think of some really valuable painting hanging on a wall in a museum. And God places great value on you. So much so that He gave His Son to die for you. That's how much He values you. Because you might be thinking, Jim, you just don't understand. God might have been thinking about me before I was born. He might have had a plan and a purpose for me before I was born. But after I was born, it was all downhill from there. I've lived a terrible life. I have lived a sinful life. I have done so much. There's no way God could possibly want me. There's no way God could call me. There's no way God could use me. It's just not possible. Well, I have good news. If that's what you think, it's not true. It is not true. You see, my sins and mistakes don't change my call. It doesn't matter what I've done. It doesn't matter what's in my past. God has a call for me. He's had it since before I was conceived. It hasn't changed. It's still there. You are God's masterpiece.